had a new CEO at the ArcelorMittal Steel Company. They felt like they needed a good shakeup. And this new boss was determined that he was going to get rid of any slackers that were in the company. On a tour of the facility, he saw a young man who was just standing there leaning up against the wall. He walked over to him and he said, how much money do you make a week? Startled young man said, what? $400. Why? CEO said, you just stay right here. I'll be back in a few minutes. Went to his office. A little bit he came back. He handed the young man $1,600. He said, this is your pay for 1 month. Now, you're fired. Get out of here and don't come back. Feeling pretty good about himself, the CEO looked around the room and he said, does anybody want to tell me what that goofball ever did around here? From across the room, a voice said, why, he's the pizza delivery man from Domino's. Now, is there a moral to that story that I dare use it in a sermon? Yes, there is. It is very important to know all of the facts before you make a decision. Unwise decisions are made a lot of times, making them too quickly and making without knowing all of the facts. There are few people who have had the time or the patience to dig through all 5 volumes of books that were written by Mr. Gibbons. The title of the book was The Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire. Up until its day, there had never been an empire as powerful, as strong as that which was to be seen in the Roman Empire. They were the best organized that had ever been done before. And yet that vast and powerful empire gradually faded away, decayed, eroded until finally the Roman Empire was no more. Mr. Gibbons gives 5 reasons why that happened. They are appropriate facts for us to know and understand in our country today. Listen carefully to why the Roman Empire failed. Number 1, the rapid increase of divorce and the undermining of the sanctity of the home. 2, higher and higher taxes and the spending of public money on bread and circuses. Number 3, the craze for pleasure, which grew more and more brutal from year to year. And there immediately flashed in my mind a picture on the TV that I saw for just a few minutes. It was 2 women in the boxing ring with no restrictions, literally beating up on each other. And the more they beat on each other, the better the crowd liked it. Number 4, the increase of armaments of war, piling up weapons when the real enemies are within. We are in a nuclear race for more and more powerful bombs. Number 5, significant is the decay of religion, that faith had faded into an empty form. Christianity will never be preserved by any legislation that can be passed. We cannot preserve the faith of our fathers by placing it in a museum or making it a shrine. The size of our buildings, the nature of our building, does not determine the faith or spirit of Christ, which must live in the hearts of people like you and me. That faith does not reside just in a building. It resides and prospers only as it's in the heart and mind of people. Nor can we propagate our faith by force, forcing other people into a relationship with Christ. Christianity was spread in its early days, and it will still be the principle that works today, by an Andrew bringing Simon Peter to meet Jesus. It was also a Nathanael who invited Philip to come and see. John 1:44, Philip, like Andrew and Peter, was from the town of Bethsaida. Philip found Nathanael and told him, "We have found the one Moses wrote about in the law, and about whom the prophets also wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nazareth? Can any good thing come from there? Nathanael asked. "Come and see," said Philip. I want you to know that it will not bother me in the least bit if you go around in your neighborhood in this community and say, "You would not believe the crazy preacher we've got. Come and see him." Whatever you have to tell him in order to get him to come, I'll try to live up to whatever you can say. Even if you tell him that I wear a red coat with eagles on my tie, whatever it takes to get him here, then we'll let the power of the gospel take over. Each of us, no exceptions, each of us has a responsibility for witnessing and bringing other people to know Jesus. Luke 5, when he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Then Jesus said to Simon, "Don't be afraid. From now on you will catch them." The bait that you use in fishing for fish makes a difference. The bait you use in attracting people to the gospel makes a difference. I find that if you want to get involved in visiting with someone that you don't know, the first thing you want to do is give them a smile. A smile is the most contagious thing that there is in the way of something you want people to catch. Well, some of you smile back at me. I told you it's contagious. A poet has expressed some very serious questions I want us to address this morning. There are certain things that will happen, that might happen, and what will be the consequences of them? When the great plants of our cities have turned out their last finished work, when our merchants have sold their last yard of silk and dismissed the last tired clerk, when our banks have raked in their last dollar and paid the last dividend, when the judge of the earth says, "Close for the night," and asks for a balance, what then? What then? Without doubt, we're living in a very materialistic world. A world that places tremendous emphasis on things. And the more gimmicks and the more gadgets it has, the more we like it. But materialism will not save your soul. Mark 8 says, "Then he called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, 'If anyone would come after me, he must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me.'" That may be even denying some of the material things that we might like to have. "For whoever wants to save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for a man to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? Matthew 6 says, do not store up for yourselves treasures on the earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not corrupt, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. What means the most to you in life? That is a telltale evidence of your relationship with God. In Luke 12 it says, then he said, this is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. I will store all my grain and my goods, and I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, you fool. Now, we're not to call people fools, but God can, because He knows the heart. He knows what's really on the inside. This very night your life will be demanded from you. Then you will get what you have prepared for yourself. Materialism. The things of this world will not get you a gold crown in heaven. Daniel says this is the inscription that was written. Now this is when there was the great banquet and the hand appeared and was writing on the wall. What was written was Mene, Mene, Tekel, Parsin. This is what these words mean. Mene, God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed on the scales and found wanting. It is appropriate for us to step on the scales and see whether we're gaining or losing weight. That has a great deal to do with our health. Weighed in the balances spiritually? How do I measure that? Well, we don't have a mechanical means, but if you take a real good look in the mirror and examine your thoughts, what's in your mind, what do you watch on TV, what books and magazines do you read? This will tell a great deal. We spend money we don't have to buy things we don't need in order to impress people we don't like. How typical that can become of us. The poet continues, when the actors have played their last drama and the mimic has made his last fun, when the film has flashed its last picture and the billboard displayed its last run, when the crowds seeking pleasure have vanished, when the crowds have vanished and gone out in the darkness again, when the trumpet of ages is sounded, and we stand up before Him, what then? In Luke 17, just as it was in the days of Noah, so also will it be in the days of the Son of Man. People will be eating, drinking, marrying, and being given in marriage up to the day that Noah entered the ark. Now stop and think for a moment. For some 100 years, the neighbors had watched that ark under construction. Crazy Noah, what was he doing? They had plenty of warning, but they were lost. Up until the very day that he entered the ark. Then the flood came and destroyed them all. It was the same in the days of Lot. People were eating and drinking, buying and selling, planting and building. But the day Lot left Sodom, fire and sulfur rained down from heaven and destroyed them all. Why? Because they were living in violations of God's moral law and standards. And those very ones, those very standards that brought about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah are being promoted in our educational system, are being promoted in movies and television. The sanctity of marriage between one man and one woman is being attacked, and Satan is being successful. But God knows what's going on. And as he would not tolerate it in that day, be sure that God is on his throne and he is all-powerful. Luke says, I tell you, he will see that they get justice and quickly. However, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on the earth? Do you realize that it's up to us? That we not only must keep the faith going strong, but we've got to share it. Whatever it takes, we've got to share it in order that people will come to know Jesus. Because you see, it's either him or the devil. Jesus or Satan. You cannot serve both God and mammon. Religiously, where are we? Unfortunately, in too many places, the gospel has been compromised. I had opportunity in a doctor's office to pick up a Bible that was lying there. I started just going through the front pages, and it had some excellent articles about the Bible and about God and about Jesus. But as I went on through, it then talked about how to be saved. And they had printed a short prayer. And the statement was, if you pray this prayer, you'll be saved and you'll go to heaven. I looked carefully through the rest of the comments. Not once did they ever mention the word baptism. Jesus was baptized. His disciples were baptized. People were baptized. Anyone who became a part of the family of God in that day were immersed into Jesus Christ for the remission of sins and the gift of the Holy Spirit. How sad it is that the full gospel is not being proclaimed in church after church. Why omit the very thing that Jesus commanded us to do, and for which it was said that baptism will now save you? What does the Bible have to say about this religious issue? What does the poet say when the choir has sung its last anthem and the preacher has made his last prayer? When the people have heard their last sermon and the sound has died out on the air, when the Bible lies closed on the altar and the pews are all empty of men, and each one stands facing his record, and the great book is opened, what then? What then? For it is time for judgment to begin with the family of God. That's us. That's where the judgment's going to begin. And if it begins with us, what will the outcome be for those who do not obey the gospel of God? And if it is hard for the righteous to be saved, what will become of the ungodly and the sinner? If you saw someone about to be struck by an automobile, would you just stand there and do nothing? Or would you shout out a warning, look out, the car's coming? We need to be shouting the message today in love that Jesus is coming back. And there will be a judgment. Mark Twain and his daughter were traveling in Europe. They had met many of the officials and dignitaries there. And then that evening, the daughter said to her dad, there's no one left for you to get acquainted with except God. Without God, knowing kings or presidents, no matter how great or powerful the people you may know, they're of no benefit to you without Jesus. Revelation says, he who overcomes will, like them, be dressed in white. I will never blot out his name from the book of life, but will acknowledge his name before my Father and his angels. It continues, and I saw the dead, great and small, standing before the throne, and books were opened. This is John, who is giving a statement of prediction of what is going to be in the future. It's coming soon. And then it says another book was opened, which is the book of life. The dead were judged according to what they had done, as recorded in the books. You see, the books are recording what you're thinking, what you're saying, what you're doing, our sins. The sea gave up the dead which were in it. Death and Hades gave up the dead that were in them. Each person was judged according to what he had done. Then death and Hades were thrown into the lake of fire. The lake of fire is the second death. That's the one that separates us from God eternally. If anyone's name was not found written in the book of life, he was thrown into the lake of fire. I try to think of the sermon today as one that says to every one of us, wake up! Wake up, get on fire, get busy for